Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
How do you feel about all this violence that has erupted in that area?
I really feel it's unnecessary, especially black against black fighting each other and stabbing and shooting each other off rooftops. If anything, to try to get a meeting and try to solve the problem as to what's going on down there. I really don't understand it myself. I just came in town for the funeral about 2 weeks ago. But I didn't know, to me the situation down there seems to be out of hand. No police action, no response as to when, who, how, or what happened down there as to my cousin being murdered, see. So I would be glad if anybody would know anything about this to please inform the police or call myself or any one of the Merriweathers and inform them as to any hint as to who might have caused this type of murder for unnecessary reasons to me.
It was territorial, depending on where you lived. And I guess the kids and their parents weren't really vigilant. Back during that time, they were just hanging out to be hanging out, and it developed and it's morphed into a gang, so to speak. They would never call themselves gangs, they would call themselves a club. And that's what they were called, clubs. They call themselves clubs. But society always identified them as being gangs and because of the violence connected with it. And they were fighting over territory, a corner or a few blocks. And it got to be really violent because you were not allowed, if you were in one gang, you were not, if you didn't have some kind of peace with the other gang, that you better not venture into that territory. How I got involved with the gangs was I was a community worker for the Neighborhood House Association. At the time I lived in the Fruit Belt. So consequently I was associated with working with the Mad Dogs, trying to help them, stop the violence, helping them with the social services that their families might have, and helping them with, trying to find jobs and that kind of thing. We had a teen center there.
What we have been experiencing as businessmen from the police department, thinking in terms of the patrolmen that respond to calls, basically has been an area of intimidation. As an example, we've had cases where policemen will drive right by kids roaming the street that have guns, and they will approach a business establishment that has been attacked by these kids and want to persecute the owner of this business because he's taken a stance to protect himself.
Well, I think it's a combination of the narcotic situation in the area and the gang situation. And one is just as great as the other simply because they're allowed to do business as freely as if they were, selling cosmetics or cigarettes from behind the counter in the store. Now, we feel that, in order for, us to survive and the community to survive socially and economically, this is going to have to be corrected. This, as a result of our letter to the president, we brought out the fact that, in order for his, referring to his positions that he had taken on law and order and black capitalism. You know, I mean, one cannot survive. Well, the black capitalism that cannot survive, you know, without the law and order becoming a reality. Because as a result, we have law-abiding citizens and industrious people in the area, you know, afraid to come out and just afraid to send kids to school, afraid to come into our area and shop. And as a result, it's killing us.
You've been speaking out now about some of the young people that live right here in your community.
Yes.
Do you have any fear that they might retaliate for this?
Well, I've been living in the community all my life, and things cannot be any worse than what they are now, and the threat cannot be any greater.
Well, what type of police measures were discussed?
I'm not really at liberty to say at this time. I wouldn't want to say, but there were various types that were discussed dealing with the situation that was there. But this is a decision that is mainly left up with the police department. They're going to get back to us. They're going to, you know, report as to what their recommendations are before they begin moving on it, and this way there'll be a joint venture.
Well, would this involve at least a beefing up of patrolling of the area?
It may and it may not. I really can't say. I'm not a professional policeman. I'm not trained in law enforcement, so I'm leaving this up to them, and they will, at the time when they come back with their suggestions, recommendations, we'll know that. There were a number of suggestions, concrete proposals that were submitted to the Housing Authority and to the Police Commissioner. There's been nothing definite. They've been taken under advisement. The Police Commissioner and both the Housing Authority will get back to us before the week is out. The other thing is that we're going to call a meeting of leaders within the black community for Wednesday to discuss the problem, to go over to it, so that there will be additional input.
They had a meeting about how to stop this gang violence, and their option for stopping gang violence was to give the police all the power, all the authority that they needed to do whatever was necessary to end the gang violence, which basically meant back during that time that they were giving them the license to kill. We thought, and probably we were thinking right at the time, because no one would have, during that time, just like now, during that time, any elderly person who had a gun permit, or maybe didn't have one, if they were confronted or appeared to, or just thought that they were being confronted with a violent act, could pull out a gun and kill one of them kids, and nothing would have been done about it. It's just like now. The kids think that folks are intimidated by them because they have a gun, but they ought to know that there are a lot more guns out there. You know, the elderly people have guns, they just don't use them a lot. But back during that time, it had gotten to a point where basically the police would say, you defend yourself, because we're going to defend ourselves, which meant there was going to be open season on anybody who was wearing a gang jacket. Open season in the community, and no one else was going to say a thing about police brutality, the police overacting. Nobody was going to say a thing. Okay? And I saw that, and I said, this is not going to happen. There must be another way to end this. And so that was the impetus for getting all of the gangs together, because the gangs were invited to that meeting. Okay? And they started coming, and Jefferson Avenue filled up real quick because everybody brought everybody. And it got to be where they started saying somebody was going to shoot this, and it got chaos broke out. Okay? And I said, this is a prime example of what the police and actually the citizens of Buffalo was concerned about, because they were afraid. Okay? And they were tired of it. And so I took the opportunity at that time to talk to a few of the gang members who were there, some of the leaders, say, listen, we got to sit down and talk, because I'm telling you, they got a death warrant out for you. Okay? You just don't know it. They got a death warrant out for you, and that's what that meeting is about. When they leave out of that meeting, your days are numbered. Okay? And that was exactly what was going to happen.
Every summer, violence flares on the east side, and suddenly the headlines are filled with youth gangs. But the gangs exist all year long, and its members think about much more than just fighting, or as they call it, jitterbugging. This is the Talbot Mall. Here, the Python Gang is in charge.
Sometimes it be junkies and pushers coming down here. And like, we're trying to clean up the community now. We're trying to get all the junkies and things cleaned up and get playgrounds for these little kids.
How about other gangs? You guys have some trouble with other gangs?
Like the Manhattan Lovers, they came rolling down here on us. So we had to fight them, run them back to their projects, you know.
These kids right here don't have no childhood. A man child as soon as they're born. You know, no childhood at all. They grow up the minute they hit the ground, you know, hit the earth. They grow up. The minute they get into the world.
Yeah. See a whole lot of problems.
Like what?
Look at like nasty living.
Look at this place right here.
Tell you a problem
we need
now.
to clean up grass.
I tell you a problem now. Ain't no place around here to go, and not trying to be funny or nothing, but a couple of people around here don't like y'all standing down here taking all this.
Why not?
They just don't like it. Well, most of the kids around here, they've been promised jobs for the longest, and they getting sick of getting promises. They haven't got no jobs yet, and they getting sick of it. And they told these junkies and these pushers out down here to get out and down here. A couple of them still hanging around, so a couple of them got shot, and now they pulling up.
Are you taking responsibility for trying to get some of the junkies and the pushers out of the area?
Yeah.
You are?
Ain't nobody else around here doing nothing about it. Police ain't doing nothing. Grown-ups sit around here and say that they doing this and doing that, and they ain't doing nothing, so somebody got to do it.
The Pythons say that they've shifted their emphasis to one of reform within their community, but they claim that they've received little encouragement or help from the establishment, and they're getting impatient. As one youth told me, this is the last meeting I'm ever going to. I'm not talking anymore.
There was a lot of, I guess, mistrust initially. There was a lot of mistrust among the gangs themselves. And that's why we had to come up with the rules. And first they wanted to see if the rules were going to be enforced across the board, or some people going to be given favoritism because they knew certain people who were on the board. First we had to get the board members who were gang leaders. These are the toughest of the tough, to sit down with each other and to forgive old differences and to work towards some kind of a compromise where we can stop the violence, because everybody wanted to stop the violence. Everyone wanted to stop the violence. Okay? And so that was the impetus for them coming together. The meetings that we deemed necessary couldn't be in a public venue. We had to go someplace where we could sit down and talk among ourselves, because what was needed at the time was a way of bringing all of them together under one idea. Rules. We had rules. We developed rules at the time, and consequences for breaking those rules. Okay. We formed a non-profit corporation called New Visions Unlimited, which were all of the gang leaders, and all of the gangs took part in it. The gang leaders were actually the board of directors. And consequently, I was chosen as the chairman of the board of directors.
Represented here in the middle of Jefferson Avenue are all the gangs on the east side, gangs that have literally terrorized the black community because of their gang wars. These gang members have incorporated now, forming the New Vision Unlimited. Membership totals are estimated at 2,000 or more. But they aren't arming themselves with guns, but brooms. This cleanup drive, they say, is a start in a constructive effort to help, not hurt the community. They are literally cleaning up their past and starting over again without help or pressure from the white community.
We wanted to prove ourselves to our own community. We wasn't pressured by anyone or any organization or anything. We just wanted to prove ourselves to our own community. No outside help were in this besides the young black people of this community. We didn't have no pressure from downtown. We didn't have no pressure from the police department or nowhere. You know, we just decided that it's time for us to prove ourselves, you know, to the black community of young, healthy, you know, vigorous black people.
No, we got separate districts, but it's under one organization now. It's called New Visions Unlimited. There's no more Mad Dogs, Pythons, Matadors, Manhattan Lovers, Lamp City, or Ala Turks, or Pythons.
Do you think there would be enough trust within all the gangs to keep this going?
Well, there is trust. You take a look. Take a look. That's trust. That's all it is, trust. You know, we love each other. We developed rules and consequences.
What were some of the rules?
The rules were, any member of any gang can go anywhere in the city, as long as they did it in a peaceful manner. If he was accosted or she was accosted, and there were females involved, if she was accosted by another gang member in another area, and there then was got other members of the gang involved, got from the different sections got involved, well then we would go talk to the people who initially started it. There would be no winners, because one of the rules were we would take the two offending people, whether you won the fight or if you got in a fight with somebody in another area, whether you lost it, you were still part of the we would take you and that other person, we would take you to a place of our choosing, and then we would have you talk to the board. And I say talk to the board, I mean, they would deal with you, okay, in any manner they saw fit, shorter than killing you. Well, but it had to have consequences. There had to be consequences. There had to be rules, and that is how we started ending the violence, actually. Because let me tell you, kids don't like to be shot at. They don't like to be out in the street corners having to watch their back every minute. Okay, they would like to be able to go and do and have fun and do things that normal people do, but because of the circumstances, because of there are no rules that govern them, there are rules that society has, okay, for them, but there are no rules governing their behavior. So consequently, it evolves into a violent confrontation many of the times, because there's no one or no group that say that's wrong. Okay, that's against our rules, our boundaries. You've back during, I guess, during the days of prohibition, there were certain rules. You know, you had territories, and if you wanted to go over in another person's territory, you had to sit down and talk about how you're going to do that, and how you're going to do that in a peaceful way without causing dissension between the two groups. And that is what we did back then, because it was over territory. Today it's different. It's about drugs, whole different motive for gang activity. Not all of them, but I suspect that most of the violence that you see perpetuated out there now in the streets is about drugs. A lot of folks don't know how gang activity diminished in the cities back during that time. They know about this cleanup, and they know about some of the other things that we did, but really gang violence stopped because we incorporated them into the general community. They brought them back in the community where they were able to go to different areas of the city and to be able to go to see the girlfriends from other parts of the city. Okay, and they would not threaten. So once that happened, we formed a security company out of the New Visions Unlimited, New Vision Security Company, where we did security for concerts and outdoor picnics and that kind of thing, which couldn't have took place before because of gang violence. There were concerts canceled. Michael Jackson came to the city of Buffalo, was coming to the city of Buffalo, and he had to cancel his concert because someone said that they were going to shoot him when he got here. They were going to shoot him. So they canceled the concert, one of the biggest concerts in the city ever had, and they had to cancel because of gang violence. Okay, so we couldn't have anything in the city. One of the things that gang members got involved with was no drugs. We got involved with voter registration. When I say no drugs, no drug dealing in certain parts of the city. No drug dealing in the Fruit Belt. Okay? It was open season on drug dealers. Back during that time, heroin was becoming very prevalent in the black community. And we knew certain drug dealers who lived in the Fruit Belt area. And I can just speak about the Fruit Belt because I lived there. There were wanted posters put out on the drug dealers. And they were carried out. So, and then we had voter registration where all the gang members who were 18 and over had to be registered. And we conducted voter registration drives that were successful. So it was just segueing them into the general population and showing them how to use their power in a way other than gang violence.